May 25th, 2017 meeting of the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission is called to order. The chair has determined a quorum is present. Mr. Brian Hicks, Bruce Kimmerly, Robert Marion, and Mr. Frank Sullivan. As you know, today we meet on a date that allowed all commissioners to participate in the board's work. Thank you very much for adjusting your schedules so that we can do this. Please keep in mind that we have 1 hour to complete our business. We'll have the Board of Public Works meeting hot on our heels. So let us begin. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the Tuesday, April 25th meeting. The commissioners have reviewed the minutes. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for approval of the April minutes? I'm sorry. So moved. Second, please. Seconded. All in favor by show of hands? Unanimous. Next on the agenda is the approval of claims and purchase orders for payment. Today we have 3 vouchers for approval totaling $21,656.98. Mr. Starnes, please comment on what transactions resulted from these vouchers.
It is related. Then there are also some engineering services filling from Hanson Engineering project have authorization for purchase and closing costs for the
Questions?
I had a quick question.
Mhm.
I saw there was a bond for Bruce on here for $1. Do we need to be bonded as well?
That's a good question. I should clarify too on the David Johnson is our counsel for the commission. He'll leave suddenly this afternoon. I could try to put my lawyer hat back on if needed, but I also have his phone number if we need him. That's a good question that we can follow up on later, though. I think that's dictated by law as to who needs to be as a member of the commission. So,
Correct.
I guess my follow-up question is, how did it come about that Bruce is being paid, his bond is being paid this go-around and ours didn't happen to fall the same?
I do know that Bruce's bond was a little off cycle because of when he joined the commission originally, which would have been the last iteration of the Redevelopment Commission. So his is a different cycle than the rest of you that started at the same time. So, and I think that caught us by surprise. I don't think we realized that coming in until we got a bill, and then we had to hurry up and fix that.
I guess can we put it on the agenda for next month to make sure that all of us are properly bonded?
Sure.
Okay.
Good idea. Thank you.
Including Mr. Clifford.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Other questions from the commissioners regarding the payments of claims? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for approval of payment? So moved by Sullivan. Second, please. Thank you, Mr. Kimberly. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous. Mr. Sullivan? Next on the agenda is just a note, if you would. We have a April 2017 financial update that's been provided. If there are any questions by the commissioners at this time, actually, Jason's not here. Are there questions? Hearing none. Next on the agenda is a staff report. Mr. Starnes.
Thank you. And I wanted to mention at the front end too, of course, I think you've all seen that we'll be welcoming Dick Freege as a non-voting advisory member to this commission. This is our sort of come clean moment. That's actually dictated by state law that the Redevelopment Commission has to have a non-voting advisory member in representation of the school corporation in the locality where the Redevelopment Commission sits. That's I don't think ever been done with this commission. It came to our attention recently that was a requirement that applied to all commissions, including this one. So we immediately reached out to Dr. Smith, the superintendent of Lawrence Township Schools, and asked for his recommendation as to who that appointment should be. He was very clear that Dick Frigie would serve that position well, and so we've appointed him accordingly. So he'll be joining us again in a non-voting capacity, but I've welcomed him. I've welcomed his input. Certainly, he and I spoke this past week, and we'll be meeting to catch up on some of the details of where we're going. But in the meantime, he'll certainly be invited to join us for these meetings and participate. But he will be a non-voting member.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
who makes the appointment?
Mayor Collier made the appointment,
The statute provides the mayor makes the appointment?
and Mr. Frigie serves as a elected member.
Right.
Everybody knows that. Okay, good. Yeah, we'll definitely welcome Dick to the board. Look forward to his participation.
And I had anticipated him today, but he must have been held up. It was, and certainly it was very much the choice of the school corporation as well. So we wanted it to be representative of input from the school corporation. So that was their choice. Moving on from that, and again, in recognition that we have a hard stop at 5, given the Board of Works is coming in, I'll move through some of these quickly. 4420 Dunn Street, you saw in the claims. We have closing set for tomorrow. So at long last, we've cleared up the right of first refusal issue and are moving toward closing and sorting out closing documents for tomorrow, after which the Redevelopment Commission will own that property and be able to move forward working toward a road project to extend Record Street through the Trades District area. Speaking on the Trades District, we did receive a preliminary sort of draft report from CBRE, from Mark Eberly, that we retained previously to do a hotel market study targeting the area of property that the RDC owns at 7600 Pendleton Pike area, Allen Sellers. I would say his preliminary findings were, generally speaking, that the hotel market in this area is strong and growing. Occupancy and rates are both up, and there is sort of a noted lack of brand new product on the hotel market, all of which are favorable signs. However, in his view, he found it unlikely that the developer would be interested in a hotel first. I made sure that he had the Trades District master plan and knew where we were headed with the corridor. And his thought was some of that other work called for in the plan needed to probably happen first in order to attract a quality brand and operator. Given the area around it, he thought that it would be seen as likely risky by a developer to put a hotel first before any of that took place. So that's his basic conclusion. I will have him, having studied it now and met with him, Jerry and I met with him to hear how he put the study together, et cetera. We'll have him finalize it and we'll disseminate it to the commissioners. I would also note that that's, it's certainly a hypothesis that we can look to test by reaching out to various hotel developers and seeing what their thoughts are and maybe providing them with the market study. And there's no harm in at least seeing what the thought is in the meantime, so I'll certainly do that. But those were his conclusions based on that report. Any questions on that? And again, we'll have him finalize it, and you will actually see the report with the data. I think taking that a step further, if we were to implement some aspects of the Trades District plan and get some additional development around there, that would be, he thinks, a fantastic site for a hotel given its visibility, proximity to 465, et cetera. So he thought it was a little early yet, but otherwise market signs are good. Welcome.
You missed your welcome, so welcome to the board.
Thank you very much. Sorry I'm late. I want to be better about realizing going from downtown along 56th Street when school's letting out Oh, sir, Lawrence.
It's a gauntlet,
Central,
isn't it?
that's not a good
Yeah, exactly.
idea.
Although this might have been, is this the last day?
Yeah, this is the last
Okay,
day.
so at least for the next couple, we might be all right.
Yep.
Also with regard to the trades district, I've mentioned several times that I've been out taking meetings to disseminate the plan and get the word out on that and try to build some partnerships, especially in the area of workforce development as part of that plan, and have a good existing relationship and partnership with the Indiana Construction Roundtable. I've invited Chris Price, the president of the Construction Roundtable, to join me at next month's meeting to present on some of the concepts that we've been working through in that regard, as well as some background information about what the Construction Roundtable is and how it operates. It's been a good partner for us to come in contact with, given that they have good industry-wide buy-in from all levels of construction, commercial, residential, road builders, and are agnostic as to union merit. So they are seen as a positive resource to both sides of that issue. So we've had recently meetings with the Ivy Tech Director of Workforce Alignment, which is a new position created at Ivy Tech last year, about demand in workforce and especially in trades, and Ivy Tech's sort of ongoing efforts to study where the demand is and reprogram accordingly, and we think that could be a potential good partner moving forward. We also met with Speaker Brian Bosma about his efforts in the legislature around workforce development and funding, just to make sure that we're on the radar in terms of trying to do something locally that could be impactful statewide and certainly regionally. So that's all been positive, but I think it'll be good to hear from Chris directly next month, and I look forward to introducing him to you and showing you what we've been working on sort of in between meetings here.
His name again is what, Cam?
Sorry?
His name
And
again?
again,
Chris Price.
Price.
Yes. Yeah, he's the president of the Construction Roundtable, the Indiana Construction Roundtable. Yeah. Which is also, it's sort of the parent entity. There's also a state subcontractors association, a Construction Roundtable Foundation that does some interesting work with secondary education and awareness in building trades as a career path, et cetera. So it's good, longstanding organization, and I think I look forward to bringing him here to talk through that. Bike share program, we've talked a little bit about on
pardon me, Kim, before you
our
leave that,
meetings. Yeah.
just one, are we now, we being economic development and redevelopment concerning the trades district, are we now part of an agenda, a plan, et cetera, to develop that with them, with that organization?
I think they will be likely a valuable partner on the workforce development piece of the trades district, whether that's through, they've recently created a new entity, workforce development initiative entity specific to building trades that could either be a lessor of a space in the trades district and a touch point for workforce development programming. They could be an educator. We'll see where that goes, and we're very much still in the window of figuring out what the best way to line those up are.
Thank you.
But
That's kind of where I'm, you're
and how to fund it, certainly. I mean, that there's
bringing together a lot of pieces.
right.
And I was, yeah.
There's a lot of sort of invisible nuts and bolts work that we're doing to try to gear up to what that could be and what would be the most impactful. Sorry, Bob.
Obviously, we're kind of back to, step one on that. And can an RFP, I think that's what you call it, be sent out on that piece to see if there's any feedback on, maybe somebody comes that's got a better idea?
Yeah, I think we want to control the concept more than that.
I understand that.
So I think an RFP is definitely where we're headed. I wanted to do some legwork on the front end to see if there's some coalition we can build around really being the epicenter of workforce development and building trades in central Indiana in Lawrence. And some of that is going to have to go on before we put out an RFP, because I think what you do with an RFP is just test the market more than test the concept. So it's just going to give us feedback about, yeah, I want to build that, which gets more into the weeds on who's going to sign a lease, who's going to pay rent, and therefore back the financing to build a building that's going to be needed to be developed by some kind of development organization. So we're in the realm of trying to build up an organization that could take up some of that space and looking at ways that we could fund that so that we could get some development happening physically. And I think the RFP is how we get that last piece in terms of physical building. There is some softer side of building a coalition that we need to do first. Yeah, Bruce.
Have you had any discussions with whoever is running the Marion County Book Development?
No, I haven't. Is there? I'm part of this work is figuring out what all the organizations are and what they do and how they're funded and what their initiatives are. I've met with Employ Indy, which may or may not be the same as the Marion County Workforce Development Entity. So if there is a separate one specifically county, I don't know that I have. Employ Indy is
County used to be a separate.
okay.
Might.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree. I'll look that up, and if so, I'll reach out to them. That's very much in the realm of what we're doing now is meeting with anyone I can that works in this space and seeing who the players are and how we can align that. So I'll look that up. Again, I've met with the director of Employ Indy, which serves Marion County. But if there's a separate organization that's Marion County based, we'll look for them too.
We're all trying to, you're talking about dealing with, or trying to get your arms around the same thing that I'm trying to get. This is, in a way, very specifically focused on the trades. CAM is identified, and with support from a lot of organizations, the need is. We're beginning to determine how do we address it, and it's kind of amorphous at this, and it's just going to take time, I think, to develop it. Ultimately, if we could address it with something as clean as an RFP, that'd be great. I don't think we're even close to that, are we?
I think we're getting close-ish to that, and I think you should look forward to next month and hearing presentation on. I think the workforce development component is the hardest to pin down into something that's concrete, and I think before we do that, an RFP probably doesn't get us where we want to go, but at the same time, it's going to be the most important in my mind in terms of really building a district that will continue to attract investment over time. If we don't nail the workforce development piece, then I don't know that the trades district has a long distance future. If we do, I'm confident that it does because the demand is there. There's plenty of growth in that area. The area is physically, I think, geographically attractive to that kind of investment, and the need for workforce development is that great, especially in building trades. That I think that's a good path towards seeing things like used car dealerships get turned into other uses over time, and building a path to employment for adjacent residents through workforce development and training to solid. I think solid footing for years to come, which creates a different kind of consumer, which changes the market. And I think that's what we're about. And so that's why I've spent so much time on the front end trying to align some of the pieces that are all over the place in a specific direction to the benefit of Lawrence and this area as something to really sort of capture.
Now, is an RFP, is that a binding agreement, or is that something that we could turn down, or, we still have the say on? I was just thinking of ideas, basically, in addition to yours, if there is any
So an RFP is not, I wouldn't say it's binding. If we get responses, we can always, as a commission, you can always not accept any of them if you wish. But I think an RFP is, I think, steered toward a specific type of idea, which is physical construction. Now, development of a concept could be part of that, but if we're going to, RFP is a vehicle to dispose of property. So the back end of that would be, we have property we want to sell. We have to, by state law, do that in a public process. So we're going to put out a request for proposals to have people tell us how they want to buy it. And I think there's value in doing this legwork outside of an RFP to see what the pieces might be to take up the space that's going to get built. So I think we're on the same page in terms of needing to listen to others, but that's what I'm doing through meeting with Ivy Tech Workforce Alignment Director and Employee Indy and anyone else like the Marion County PIC or and the Construction Roundtable and their various iterations and their foundation and legislators to bounce that off of anybody that I can and get feedback. So I think that's part of my job now, and I think we probably get further that way than by doing an RFP.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you. So moving on, absent further questions, the bike share program is something we've talked about a little bit in the past as sort of a thing to start and grow over time. Specifically, something that can enhance, I think, the Fort area for the time being, and I think be a good program to extend down Franklin Road once the road project is complete. It currently calls for bike lane and improved sidewalks, both running up from 46th Street up to 56th Street, which brings the trades district into play. So if those pieces start to fit together and we have some education happening, there's a new mode of transportation to get up and down that corridor to and from the fort. So also a way to, I think I mentioned we have a grant from the MPO downtown to do a bike pedestrian master plan, which is underway. I think we've selected a consultant and are starting to work on that. That will give us recommendations on new pedestrian and bike infrastructure to be constructed in the future, and I think the bike share program gives us a way to potentially provide match dollars on some of that. The program works such that we have a master services agreement with Zagstra, the bike share service provider. That contract amount is covered through sponsorships in exchange for visible marketing on the stations and the bikes, and then there is a rental fee that we decide that is charged for somebody checking out a bike that then can be kept by the organization holding the contract. And I think here we're talking about creating a separate sub-fund that would be for bike pedestrian infrastructure that would be funded by rental fees so that we can look to implement that bike pedestrian master plan in the future and provide potential match dollars for trail construction. That's the general sort of gist of that program. We have approached the Fort Harrison Reuse Authority about joining forces with the city to approach sponsors for the bike share program. They, at their last meeting, agreed to do that. So we'll be approaching sponsors together with the Reuse Authority. And by way of update, the Reuse Authority also has agreed to sponsor five bikes for the first year. That starts to get us started. I think in talking to Zagstra, we're targeting potentially 20 as a start, focused on the Fort area with an eye toward expansion into other areas as soon as we can. And I think we have some sponsorship targets, and we'll be sending out letters early next week. And that's how we'll put the program together and fund it. So you'll note in the agenda under action items, we have it in there for the commission to approve the contract as just the entity to hold the contract. This is not a financial obligation at this point. It's just the entity that will hold the contract for the services, and then the funding for the services themselves will come from the sponsors. So unless and until we ask the Redevelopment Commission to sponsor a bike or bikes, this would be sort of just a contract holding position. And the risk is we've negotiated the contract with, David and I negotiated that with Zagster and their counsel to get to where it is now, to make sure that we're comfortable with the indemnification language and how that programming works, and with, and have our heads around any risks of holding the contract. And we're confident that the only risk if the sponsorships don't materialize is that we don't get the bikes that we wanted. Not that we have to make up the difference as a redevelopment commission in the total order amount. So any sponsorships that don't materialize, those drop off the order. So currently, we would move forward and have 5. If we get some sponsorships in the next couple of weeks to get us up to 20, then we'll do 20. If we get a handful of other sponsorships and we have a total of 10 bikes, we can implement 10. So that's not just by point of clarification, when we get to the action item about the contract, it's not putting the Redevelopment Commission on the hook to make up the difference between any sponsorships and the total ordered number of bikes. Any questions about the bike share program?
Mr. Chairman, would, in the interest of time, it makes sense to just go right to the agreement now and dispose of it, or?
I think that's an excellent idea.
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
So, may I?
Please.
So, Cam, what I understand you're saying is that you're asking for authorization to not to execute an agreement with Zagster now, but have the authority to execute an agreement with Zagster for that number of bikes that you obtain sponsorships for. Is that right?
Yes, I think that's accurate. I'm asking for the authority to execute the agreement following and this is still under our internal review as well. So David and I have worked on the legal aspects. The controller's reviewing it now. This would be the authority as the holding body for us to execute when we're satisfied that everything is in place.
But you want to do this so that you don't have to come back to us.
Right.
Once your internal legal review and you figure you've gotten as many sponsors as you're going to get.
Yes.
I noticed an exclusivity clause in here that says that we can't, for the period of 3 years, we wouldn't be able to do
Different bike shares.
anything with anybody else.
Right.
And so what happens if, 6 months down the road, I don't know, the DFAS comes across the street and says, we'd like to do a bike share program with you, but we have to use federal government procurement rules, and Zagster's not on the schedule of government entities or something like that. We'd be precluded from doing an agreement with them. Is that right?
Well, this is active. Yes, I think we would.
And is this important to is this exclusivity important to them?
Important to Zagster?
Yes.
I think so, but it's also, in terms of current landscape of bike share services, there are really 2. It's Zagster and B-Bike, which is
3 years is a long time in
true.
the world of cyber economics. Well, anyway, maybe I could just raise a couple of issues since you're still talking about
certainly
the key to making this work is their software.
yes.
They don't give us any warranty that they own that software, at least the way I've read this. Now, they do give us an indemnification that they're not breaching anybody else's software, but they don't warrant to us that they own it. That might be something you'd want to think about.
Yeah.
And then we have a responsibility that we're not going to allow anybody to do anything with that software. And it seems to me that language got to be. You need to think that language through. I don't have any suggestions for you, but if somebody were to hack things from our end, we wouldn't want to have to be responsible for that. If somebody came in and hacked it through one of our portals or something like that, we wouldn't want to have responsibility under those circumstances. I mean, to what extent are we going to have to keep that software secure
Right.
against hacking, I guess is my.
Which certainly a good point. I think in reviewing that myself, it seemed to me something that would feed into general non-indemnification or the general indemnification language that we added as part of our standard sort of contract addendum that we've incorporated into this about acts of third parties. But at the same time, I would.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would say-
anyway, we don't really have time to. But I'm just there are things that and what after they've disclaimed all these warranties and have provided that really the only remedy is if something doesn't work, they'll do it over again. The value to us of the insurance that they agree to maintain is going to be what?
Insurance that they agree to maintain on the user.
Well, under Schedule C2, they agree to maintain insurance up to certain limits. And I'm just trying to think here. So a user has a bad accident using one of their bikes and sues us and sues them. It seems like under these warranties and limitations and remedies and things like that, we've got no claim against them for anything.
Against city claim against Zagster itself.
Yeah. Now, the bicyclist might have a claim, so suppose the bicyclist only sued us and didn't sue them. And it was clearly because the gear shift didn't work or something like that. But they've disclaimed any warranty of merchantability. They've disclaimed any responsibility for doing anything more than if something's broken, fixing it. So we'd have no claim back against them for that. Is that basically the way you understand this?
I mean, I would tend to see that as we would be able to. I mean, I think that user, that writer, would have to join them. I don't know that we would have a direct claim against Zagster. I don't know.
But the claim is brought against us for us having supplied them with the user with a bicycle that where the gear shift the brakes didn't work. The brakes were stripped. And we conclude, I suppose we could join Zagster in the action, right?
That was my thought. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that we would have a claim, but we could join them to the action.
Well, but we would,
liability to the user.
if the bicyclist recovered from us, we might have then a claim over against Zagster if the reason the brakes didn't work was because of their negligence.
Right.
But last meeting or a couple meetings ago, you said that we had duty of maintenance and that we would contract with Matthews, a local bike shop.
Yeah. Zagster has the duty of maintenance. Okay. I wanted to make clear in the earlier meeting that it's the service agreement is sort of all encompassing, not only in terms of provision of the equipment, but in maintenance and repair thereof, which I think is in here. And in speaking to the Zagster people, they generally handle that through a contract with a third party. And to the extent that we're able to push them into local direction, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we would look to do that.
So we would not have the duty of maintenance.
No.
And so we just need to bolster the indemnification language with Zagster. Either that or we also go out and get our own insurance policy that covers us if we're going to hold the contract. It seems like it'd be prudent to have our own insurance policy against claims of defective bikes, or the indemnification language with Zaxxer's going to have to be awfully strong.
Right, and I think, again, David was looking hard at indemnification language and was satisfied with that, and we certainly have general insurance as the city that would potentially absorb any of those claims, but I'm happy to take these
Well, the only
concerns
thing
back
the
to council.
indemnification reaches is gross negligence or willful misconduct on their part, or that they've somehow, that they don't have the rights to use this software. It doesn't indemnify us for any losses that we might sustain as a consequence of the bikes breaking or not working or motorists having an accident or anything like that. And so,
Yeah,
I mean, Ron's right, we would, one of the things we would need to build into our financial model would be costs of insuring against those risks. Is there any kind of a financial pro forma on what this is going to look like from our standpoint?
Part of it, I mean, I think that comes in terms of how the sponsorships materialize. That additional cost, if we were going to assure those risks, or maybe we should look at trying to put them in there. I mean, I think that's a good question for David, and I'll certainly take it back to him and we can discuss that. But additional costs beyond that we would need one. If it's specifically the provision of bike share services, that's wrapped up into the same fee. So the pro forma is really $1,800 per bike per year, and that's inclusive of maintenance and repair and installation of stations and provision of the equipment for the contract term. So I think that's sort of how that pencils out, so to speak. Additional costs in terms of that we'd incur for insurance would be, we'd have to look at how we fund that separately. Otherwise, there's not money currently coming from the RDC to this master services agreement. Bob.
As we're under time crunch, one question. Why wasn't this, it seemed like the LDC would be more in line with heading up this program versus us. We're Pendleton Pike. This program is basically the fort, right now. I don't know, was LDC not offered, or did they not?
LDC.
Well, the Development Corporation for the fort.
What, you mean FHRA?
Reuse Authority.
Yeah, Fort Harrison Reuse
City
Authority.
of Lawrence.
Or the City of Lawrence itself.
Right.
Yeah, we thought this was a good entity to hold the contract, given that it's concerned with development over time, and this is a marketable thing that it could be attractive to companies locating here, and something that we hope to expand over time to include the Pike, and actually one of the initiatives being, broadly speaking, to foster better connections between the fort and Pendleton Pike. If the bike share has momentum here and we have some good activity happening around the trades district, a potential workforce development center, some new businesses locating there, potentially a hotel, we add a station or stations that way, then that's one way that we can accomplish that connection. And so I think it's still, given even that's our redevelopment focus area, this is the Lawrence Redevelopment Commission. And so I think our concern is, outside of the TIF, is a little broader than that, than just Pendleton Pike. Beyond that, the Fort Harrison Reuse Authority has, especially now having awarded Parcel J an exclusivity to a developer for Parcel J, coming down to 2 to 3 smallish parcels to dispose of for development in the future. And then in our conversations with the board, they foresee in the next 3 to 4 years that organization is really meeting once a year to approve debt service, and not an ongoing active organization, which I think we're fine with. That they were tasked with a specific job, and I think if we're looking at this as a longer term thing, and they're looking to be winding down starting and tapering starting 2, 3, 4 years from now, I don't think that means they're the best organization to hold this contract. We thought we'd rather hold it ourselves. I can ask them specifically if they'd like to, But I think coming from city staff, administration, we'd like to have it here.
One last question from me.
No, please,
And how,
I know we're,
explain to me,
no, it just, we're crunched for time, but I think we need to make sure that we get all our questions answered and really work through this. If it means that we go to next meeting in order to do this, so be it.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Table it till next.
I'm concerned, and if I can, Frank, just ask you, go to the indemnifications, which is on the next page on that schedule. I apparently misunderstood that. Under Schedule C, page 8, it's on page 8, indemnification. I read that as Zagster literally doing what they said here. They agreed to defend their sole expense, the company or company's affiliates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to defend us against claims, anything they do or provide. And they're providing the entire program. Ours is a financial concern, except for the provision of the station's property, correct? I mean, where they actually place the bike stations, right?
Yeah, I think Justice Sullivan's point is the qualifier on that is they're agreeing to defend us against claims of gross negligence or willful misconduct, which is, different than the brakes failed because you didn't maintain them properly. That I don't think that's necessarily gross negligence. That might be more
Okay, so that's, I'm with you.
there's a hole there that I think Brian and Justice Sullivan have identified.
Okay,
that
I've got you.
I'm happy to
Is
take back to legal and
included in that whole is because I actually witnessed this. What about the person that rents a bike and agrees to, they're $3 for an hour, et cetera, and they have not a clue of how to ride a bike? You don't know how, they just don't. They're cruiser bikes, they're easy to, you could do it blindfolded, Cam. But there are people that want to climb on that bike and ride the cultural trail downtown. This woman had no business on a bike. Okay. So she crashes the bike and she's hurt. Okay. Whose fault is that? Is it the bike's?
Well, that's kind of the scenario we're talking about. Who does she sue? And,
Exactly.
And how do we get out of it?
Yeah. Okay. Have we done?
And that's fine.
Can we table this until the next meeting? And is there a way, if there is a way that we could, assign us ourselves to read through this and kind of document the things that we either don't completely understand, don't have the background to understand, but should know before we say let's go. Would that be helpful to you?
That's fine. I wish David were here to. I think he's thought through some of these things probably in more detail. My focus has been on how do we program it and market it and get it going, and how do we get sponsors. So,
well, and as I mentioned to Cam before the meeting started, I'd really like to see us move forward with this program. I think it's a great program. It's worked very well in other communities. To quote Cam, but I've kind of witnessed this too. Carmel has this all along the trail up north, and they use Exeter, and they love it. It works well.
And proved to be, I think they started with 25 bikes, and within the first 6 months to a year had expanded the program to 90.
So
Because it was that popular and people wanted to be involved with it. So I do see it growing over time, and I think it's a great way to sort of build connectivity to the fort as the sort of new city center over time, which is why I think it makes sense for the Redevelopment Commission. But this is how we get where we're going. If there are concerns, we'll address those. I do wish David were here. Since he's not, if we want to wait till next month, we'll do that. And if there are questions in the interim, we can discuss those. Yeah.
Jerry, I would say that I think these are just sort of lawyer issues that either get negotiated or not negotiated. And I'm not sure that I see anything here that caused me to say that I think I need to wait until next time. Maybe, I might send a little memo to Cam and David just listing some of the issues that, It sounds to me like they're giving this, it sounds to me, first of all, it sounds to me like they're still working on this. There are going to be some things that Zagster's going to be willing to agree to and some things not. And I think our executive director and our lawyer has these in their hands, has our authority in their hands. I've got confidence in them. They'll negotiate the best deal they can for us. But I do think, Cam, that we really ought to have sort of a pro forma that takes into account not only what we're going to have to pay Zagster, but we're going to have somebody on our end is going to have some expenses beyond just the fees under this agreement. And I would say there's certainly going to be, well, I don't know, the insurance premiums that the city and the has already may bring this within that umbrella or something like that. But I'd guess that we're going to have some expenses on our end beyond just what we pay to Zagster, and that ought to be pro forma'd out.
Sure. And I don't know, I haven't seen any in terms, until we started talking about additional insurance that may cost us more money in premiums. I've not seen any that would be out anything. Currently, it's being reviewed by the controller. That would be part of that discussion too. And to your point, I think that this was authority to continue to negotiate toward execution agreement that would be acceptable. I think we've done this in prior, on prior matters, acceptable to the president of the commission, and he's the touch point for concerns moving forward and making sure that those are addressed in the final document before he signs it. That's kind of the point of the resolution.
And it doesn't need to be right this minute, but, the bike station, building it, maintaining it, security, the lighting, it sounds like there's going to be some issues, cameras, for safety reasons and other. Seems like there's some ancillary costs here that, I just have questions that maybe I can do it in an email with you guys.
Sure. I do. I mean, the stations, in terms of installation, maintenance, construction, all that, I think cameras wouldn't necessarily be covered, but the other parts, I think, are part of the service agreement costs. So that's along with the bikes.
So, would you care to make a motion to?
What's your pleasure? Want to hold?
I'm fine, as long as we get all the questions out. If we want to provide them authority to execute the master service agreement, I'm fine with that. How are you?
Equal poise. We have an advisory member now too.
Yeah.
We can put him on the spot.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that need to be considered on this, but back to your point, to press that Cam and Mr. Johnson will address those. I think they will. I think that anything we can do to, based on our experience, help them with this, we should be able to do that. I mean, things like the $3. I mean, who's going to make just little things too. Who's going to make the decisions whether it's $3 or $4 an hour? Mm-hmm. But that's little stuff. I think I'm fine with letting them do it.
It's the province of this commission to decide. Certainly, I'm not even taking position. Timing wise, this wasn't on there to rush it. We talked about it before. We just recently, in the last couple of weeks, with David, got it to a form where we were comfortable bringing it to
I'll
you.
make the following motion, and I can be talked out of it. That we not proceed on the contract now, and that we ask the staff to bring back to us at our next meeting a little bit of a sort of a financial plan for what this is going to look like.
Sure.
And because I think Brian's raised some good questions here about, are we going to be responsible for the places where these stations are set? How is that determined? Are we going to have to pay any money for that space? Is it going to be lit? Jerry's raised questions about how much we're going to charge people to use. It seems to me like before, maybe not as a condition of executing the contract, but before going forward, we ought to say we think that we're going to have 25 bikes in year 1 and 50 in year 2 and 75 in year 3. And the cost of supporting that is going to be whatever's under here, plus insurance premiums, plus lighting or cameras or things like that, and have sort of a budget for what it is that we're getting ourselves into. So, Mr. Chairman, my motion would be that we withhold action on this. We ask the staff to come back with an updated draft and a financial plan for this project.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor by show of hands? That's what we're doing. In the interest of time, Cam, if you don't mind.
Nope.
Since we've talked about these items before, let's go directly to approval for continued support of the transaction involving permanent magnet property through the use of an EPA assessment grant in accordance with the cooperative agreement with the EPA. You're looking for approval?
Context briefly on that. The
Okay.
parties are negotiating a new purchase agreement. Timeline's been extended. I think the old one expired. Mission Mechanical, which that's 75 employees, considerable investment. Still very interested. They want to be sure that they've covered in their agreement that there is provision for completing the proposed scope of environmental work on the project. We've already had that scope approved. It's all covered under the grant. We certainly aren't a party to the purchase agreement, but I told them I would have the Redevelopment Commission vote to say, we want to continue to support this using our EPA grant resources. That's not money out of the TIF or any other source. It's all 100% reimbursed by the EPA. Just to say, you can word that between yourselves however you want. We see this as a good use of the EPA funds, and we want to support that transaction for a property that otherwise continues to sit vacant and unused. So that's why we've put this on there, just to approve continuing to support it.
Do I hear a motion for approval?
I so moved.
Second. All those in favor by show of hands? Great, thank you. Unanimous. Dropping down to approval of professional, this is again another item that we should be familiar with. Approval of professional service engagement for Walmart Summers and Haas with regard to real estate and incentives matters for and amount in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
This relates to a staff update item that I missed that we skipping due to time. Raised Trash Service moved into Lawrence last year. They have need for a new recycling facility on this side of town. Their current operations are on the west side, and they have a lot of clients here, which is pretty significant capital investment and also a significant number of employment opportunities. I think we're well positioned in Lawrence to capture that potentially. There's some complication with regard to real estate, and they've asked us to work with them to see if we can figure that out, because I think they like Lawrence, and we see them as a good community partner going forward, potential good employer for a long time in Lawrence. So this engagement would just be to have some adjunct legal services to help see if we can structure that transaction. $20,000 was put there just as a cap. If this is not going to be real, we won't get close to that. If it's going to be real, then that'll be good preliminary money. We'll come back if we need to go over that. David will certainly continue to work on it. This is sort of outside expertise specific to how we put that deal together and value the investment that they plan to make and the employment opportunity. So that's related to the potential expansion.
Something like this was tried before, and Kensington fought this bad.
Something like
I don't know who it was, but who was the trash people before Ray's?
waste management.
Waste management. Yeah.
I think they were trying to do a similar type thing. And Kensington came off the wall and shut it down.
It's, we'll certainly see what the feedback is. I think waste management's, my understanding, of course, coming in late to that, is that their proposal was a little different in terms of storage of material on site, not a landfill, but closer to that. This would be all enclosed, and it's currently zoned appropriately for that, for the recycling operation, which is really sort of sorting and baling over time. So all under roof in a building. So I think we'll certainly be sensitive to that moving forward, and it's a part of what we'll need to explore. But from what I understand of what Waste Management proposed, this would be a little different, and we'll have to see where that goes, and what the benefit would be, and whether that outweighs concerns about that moving forward. But Ray's doesn't own landfills. Their model is all based on recycling, which is probably provides a better neighbor, but that's all part of the equation.
I just lay my card and say, I don't think I'm prepared to support this, but I'll just ask a couple of questions and then think the will of the commission. I thought Barnes and Thornburg was our outside counsel.
We have an arrangement with Barnes and Thornburg. The city does as outside counsel for various things, we've worked with them on the 4420 Dunn Street transaction. This is, I think, a little different. We're not issuing a bond, and we're not. We're exploring how to structure the transaction. I think, in my experience, the experience that Wallach, Summers, and Haas has in structuring that kind of thing is valuable to us. And
What is that experience? What is their experience?
The firm?
Yes.
Carl Haas has been working in economic development for a considerable amount of time. He was instrumental in real estate and transaction structuring
They've got references that you've checked and things like that.
Certainly, and I've worked with them before. I think they're instrumental in large-scale downtown things like Circle Center Mall and Central Canal reclamation, and Cummins headquarters downtown, and the 360 Market Tower. That's people that I've come to know and trust, and it's also a lower rate than we get from Barnes and Thornburg.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
It's also a lower rate than we get from Barnes and Thornburg, which is always a factor.
I've expressed my views on this commission before, that when we go out to hire people, that we be sensitive to the diversity of this community. And I looked at this firm after we got this agreement yesterday, and this is an all-white firm with no women associates. There's a woman partner. And it just doesn't seem to me that it sends the kind of message that I want to send as a member of this commission in the way we procure outside services. So I'm going to oppose this contract primarily on that basis. Has Mr. Johnson looked at it and approved this language?
Yeah.
Because it seemed to me that the ability of a lawyer to fire the client for not heeding the lawyer's advice was something I can't remember ever asking of a client, but maybe times have changed. But I thought that was a very unusual a provision. I thought lawyers were supposed to be loyal to their clients and not retain the right to quit if they didn't heed their advice or recommendations. But that's not the principal basis of my. If Mr. Johnson thinks that this is the way it ought to be.
Add something. I think that's I've never seen it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
I've never seen it in the
Yeah, that's, Brian, do you have a comment on this?
I've terminated clients before that would repeatedly go against my advice, but I've never stuck it in a contract.
In my view, reading it, it speaks to sort of a breakdown in the relationship with the client, and I wasn't. I mean,
It's probably what they were.
I wasn't taken
getting at,
aback by
is that
it.
was an irretrievable breakdown in the relationship. But
yeah, I mean, I don't see that happening just based on a simple disagreement. And if so, then so be it. I'd be shopping for a different lawyer anyway.
I guess my response to Judge Sullivan's comments would be, are we aware of another firm that you'd be comfortable with that has more diversity in this area.
I'm not. No. And so that's certainly consideration. This is a small firm. I think they specialize in this type of work in a lot of areas, and I have good experience with them. And I think that in combination with the competitive rate that they've offered us gives us good value. And I'm not aware of a firm that be more diverse that would offer that same kind of combination.
One other, finish my comment. I really take
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve this engagement with Wallach, Simmers and Haas? Do not. So if we could look at those clauses and we can make better sense of this,
Sure.
it'd be great. And we are out of time, gentlemen. We made a commitment to be out, to be completed by 5. Mary Jo is nudging me.
If I could say one thing, I'd like to congratulate Cam on his work to get the farmers market started on the Fort.
It was on my last notes. First farmers market, Fort Bend Farmers Market, June 1st. It's Thursday evenings, 4 to 7:30, from June 1 through October, and it will be immediately adjacent to Civic Plaza on Lawrence Village Parkway between Otis and Hawkins. And vendor turnout, vendor interest and sign up is really positive. We've got 16, good variety, and I think it'll be a great addition to the fort.
Before we move to adjourn, do you need authority, the last item on new business, do you need authority to hire 2 qualified commercial appraisers?
Yeah, I'd like that if we can wedge that in. Just, I did not to exceed 10,000. Just to get it going, we'll need to do that. So that enables me to
We need
call some and
discussion.
get some quotes.
Do we need discussion on that before we
That'd be up to you all.
move on that?
Well, I don't because is everybody familiar with what you need it for?
Yeah.
And you're okay with it? Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to engage the 2 qualified commercial appraisers.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor by show of hands? Sorry, we're 2 minutes over. Thank you very much. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second. And all those in favor? Thank you. See you next month. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Good discussion.